Are you ready? Hey everyone, this is Cody Allsup, and he's going to be giving his presentation on the Dream Keepers. Please give him your full attention and take good notes so you can use it on your presentation too.
Alright, my book was on the Dream Keepers by Gloria Lasson Billings. She was born in 1947 and she grew up in Pennsylvania. She actually went and graduated from Stanford. She was educated in the Pennsylvania public school system. She's now a professor at Wisconsin, Madison, and she serves as a president on the American Educational Research Association. In this book, she kind of discusses how her childhood was. She talks about how her parents both had to work full-time, and back then that wasn't necessarily the norm. Her father even had to work 2 jobs. She talked about how her class, a lot of them, their parents were their dad was doctors and their mom didn't have to work at all. So it was a big difference between her and her classmates. A lot of her classmates were rich white kids, basically. And then another big thing was her class was really competitive. So a lot of their parents did their homework for them. She said she noticed when she moved there that she had always done her own work. She did it to the best of her ability. But a lot of the parents at this school were all about their child being better than the rest of the class, not necessarily the best they could be. It was just about wanting to show off, basically. She specifically mentioned how there was one kid who had terrible work in the classroom, but when they had out-of-class projects, he would bring in the neatest projects because his mom would do it for him. And there was not a togetherness with the class. It was all about how you were doing. We'll kind of we'll hit that later, and that's not how she wants teachers to be. This book, her contribution to education, is about how we should teach African American children, and her main theory was culturally relevant teaching. She actually observed 8 teachers over a 3-year period, and she took ideas from all of them. So we'll get into more. Here's some statistics. The high school dropout rate in New York City and California is about 35%. And these are like inner cities where there's a large number of African Americans. An African American boy, this is a really tough stat. An African American boy who was born in California is 3 times more likely to be murdered than to be admitted to a 4-year college in that state. So, she says it's because we're not teaching to them. We're trying to use the color blindness, we don't see color deal, and that's just, it's not working. She wants us to be culturally relevant teaching, and this means teachers have high self-esteem and high regard for others. They don't acknowledge, or they do acknowledge color, and that all people are different. All people are different. All people come from different backgrounds. All people have different families. All people have different parents that make different money. And we should get to know each student individually and how they are. These teachers have confidence, and they believe that all students can do well. An example of the way she wants us to teach is if a student isn't very good in the classroom, and they're not necessarily trying hard, we should learn what they're good at outside of classroom and praise them for that. So like an example would be if somebody's good at football, maybe bring that up. Hey, I heard you're doing a great job in football. And having that praise may make them want to do better in the classroom. That's what she pointed out. But don't sugarcoat it and tell them they're doing something good if they're not. I know I've seen a lot of teachers in my personal experience do that. They say, oh, that's a good job. But if you're doing that, you're just setting them up for failure later down the road. These teachers want to see themselves as part of the community. She said several teachers in this book would eat lunch with the students and get to know them personally. They would invite them to church and all that kind of stuff. So they would try to be part of the community. These teachers believe that all students can succeed. I know in my personal experience, and I'm sure y'all's too, you've heard a teacher or you've seen a teacher who completely has no faith in students and they just don't even try with them. They say it's not worth it, they're not going to learn, they can't learn, so they don't even try. But that's not how we should look at it as teachers. We should look at it that we should at least try, give the effort, get to know the student, get to know why they're struggling, and try to help them out as best we can. These teachers help students make connections with their community. So make what they're learning connectable to their life, applicable. I know my math teacher in high school, we had to pick out a mortgage plan and do the math, and that was really a fun activity. Even though I'm not really a big math guy, like it at least made it put into perspective what we needed to do. These teachers dig knowledge out. I know personally a lot of my teachers, they just shove knowledge at you, but they don't ever let you think. It's just all about, hey, memorize this for the test. They just teach to the test. But these teachers, they want you to be creative thinkers. They want you to participate in debates, and they want you to really just be creative and learn that way. Alright, and the teacher-student relationship is fluid, humanely equitable. This means the connection's real. I've sat in so many classrooms where, like I just said, they just teach to the test. They don't try to get to know their students. They just don't care if that person's learning. These culturally relevant teachers, they care for each student. They want them to learn. They want them to participate and do their best. And there's a real connection with all students. They try to get to know them better. They try to help them any way they can. These teachers also encourage a community of learners. Unlike her classmates, these students, she wants students to help each other. I know she talks about how one of the teachers in this book gave them study buddies. That's what she called them. And they were responsible for each other. The teacher, if one of the students wasn't doing good, she'd go to the other student who was their study buddy and get on to them because they weren't holding them accountable. And then you give each student individual goals based on how they, like say you can give them a test at the beginning of the year, see how they're performing, and then you can build individual goals off that. So that's a key thing. I did some other research. I read an article by Emily Leibtag, and she calls it building bridges of meaningfulness between home and school. So school should be something that we can build on and take it the rest of our life, not just memorizing facts and hopefully just graduate. That shouldn't be what school is about. Sarah Edwards, she found 8 dispositions that effective culturally relevant teachers use. And here they are. They have culturally responsive educational materials and content. They're knowledgeable about all aspects of multicultural education. They're supportive. They have multiculturally supportive learning environments, culturally responsive assessment, batteries, ongoing family communication, ethically and culturally responsive curriculum, integration of cultural responsiveness throughout all academic areas, and personnel knowledgeable and culturally responsive behavior. So it's very similar to what Gloria Ladson-Billings says. We should get to know them on a personal level. We should have family communication, and really just try to set them up for the best they can be, not just make them memorize facts. How am I going to use this? I'm a PE major, so As a PE teacher, it is important to know every student's strengths and weaknesses. We can highlight their strengths, and we can praise them for those strengths and build them up, and then we can try to improve their weaknesses. I can have them fill out a questionnaire, and then we can do to determine what their strengths and weaknesses are, what they think they are, and what their favorite sports or what their favorite activities are to do. Then we can do a conditioning test for each person, and we can figure out individual goals, short-term and long-term, and we can constantly work to improve on that.